response to the Blake decision on drug possession, criminal justice reform, and police accountability measures. I'm Tracy Ellis with the Senate Republican Caucus Communications Team. With us today are the Republican members of the Senate Law and Justice Committee, Ranking Member Senator Mike Patton of Spokane Valley, Assistant Ranking Member Senator Jim McCune of Graham will be joining us, we hope, soon. Senator Jeff Holy of Cheney is here, and Senator Keith Wagner of Cedar Woolley. We'll allow you to raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question in just a bit. We'll call on you, and we'll get things started right now with some opening statements. Let's begin with Senator Patton.
Well, thank you very much, Tracy. We're here today because of very serious concerns about the State v. Blake decision issued by a very closely divided state Supreme Court, a 5-4 decision almost 1 month ago on February 25th. In that decision, the court ruled that our felony drug possession law was unconstitutional. And a felony is a serious offense. This is a Class C felony, punishable by up to 5 years in jail and or a $10,000 fine. So we will go into some of the impacts on law enforcement and the courts here in a little bit, but I want to initially talk to you about some impacts on everyday citizens. I received a email from a constituent in Spokane who works in the Hutton building downtown and has 2 female workers there who have been harassed coming in and out of the building by transient drug users who have said, well, there's nothing the police can do about this. And this is a serious problem. He's contacted the Spokane Police Department, and they've told him, well, the legislature needs to fix the law, fix that decision. And it has been about a month. And while there is some activity that's happened, I think we need to speed things up. This is a serious crisis, I think, on a statewide basis. There also was the incident out of Everett. The Everett police had indicated they found a car parked under a bridge on the side of the road, and the lady in there was shooting up heroin. And they looked at her and said, nothing you can do about this, it's legal now. So while there were some things they could do, they could wait to see if she drove impaired or other things, and perhaps seize the drugs, but exactly how and whether they could enter a space such as a car was another question. So these are real impacts. And of course, in addition to that, prosecutors and law enforcement, they've had to arrange for the immediate release of all pretrial detainees, obtain orders vacating judgments for jailed persons who are currently serving time, recall all arrest warrants in cases involving felony possession of drugs, dismiss with prejudice, which means you can't bring a case again, cases in which the charge was a felony possession of drugs, and figure out what to do. And this is kind of tragic with the drug court participants. A drug court is a therapeutic court, deals in treatment, but if the drug charges are no longer there, the people can walk away from the drug court without any consequences. And what's going to happen? I mean, a lot of these folks, drug habits very expensive, could be as much as $1,000 a week. How are they going to get that money? And they turn to crime, robbery, burglary, other things. There's also impact on the courts. There's resentencing that's going to have to take place, and our courts are already behind the 8 ball due to the COVID crisis, and there have been very few, almost no civil jury trials, and the criminal jury trials are just starting to start back up again. There's impact on the Department of Corrections, and tremendous impact on the cities and counties for the legal financial obligations, which are probably going to have to be refunded. The impact has been estimated by the Washington Association of Prosecuting Attorneys to be $100 million or more, primarily dealing with the LFOs, the resentencing, the hearings, temporary courtrooms, and the impact on some of our jails and correction facilities. So the Senate Republicans have sponsored Bill 5471. It's still alive, and a lot of us have supported Senate Bill 5475 by Senator Mullet. He had an earlier version, but both 5471 and 5475 are still alive. They're NTIB. And the key part of that, and what we think is so fundamental, is to fix the decision and add knowingly back into the statute so that people can be arrested that are in possession of drugs. Now, Senator Dingra has just introduced a bill 5476, and while there's some good portions of that bill, some things that we like, it basically allows for personal possession of what has been a felony drug offense. So while you may want to divert a case for treatment, maybe once, some people may want to do it twice, but at some point you've got to prosecute, you got to hold people accountable, or you're going to have the problems like I mentioned earlier in Spokane, where somebody just kind of blows off the treatment knowing there's no real consequences. So what she does in her bill is says the knowingly only applies if you are having, selling drugs, distributing more than what you need for personal use. But the personal use, it would be a diversion program. So her bill is necessary to implement the budget. It does appropriate funds. This is something Ways and Means is going to have to deal with, because there's, like I said earlier, a cost of $100 million or more. Those are some of the things we admire the package that the House Republicans put together, but our focus is on knowingly. And I would say we're open to working with Senator Dingra. It's really not important whose bill it is. It's who gets the credit. What is important is that we fix this problem for the citizens of our state. And we now wanted to cover some of the so-called police reform bills, and I'll turn it over to my colleague from Spokane County, Senator Jeff Holy.
Well, thank you, Senator Padden. Jeff Holy from the 6th District on the west side of Spokane County. I have kind of a unique perspective for being on the Law and Justice Committee in the Senate. I'm a career police officer of Spokane Police, 22 years, and I retired. I've also been an attorney for the last 31 years. There's about a 16-year overlap. And I, as a Rule 9, an attorney intern, I worked at the Spokane City Prosecutor's Office, and since retiring in 2006 from the department, I've assisted in criminal defense work. So I've seen pretty much all of the criminal justice arena up close and personal. First concern today has to do directly with public safety and the disadvantage the public's put at as a result of some of the possibly misinformed or misdirected attempts at legislation that are going to fix problems. I think that whose goals, objectives are worthy. The methods they use are totally non-starters. First of all, without reciting any of the bills, we need to find a balance so our state can focus on real solutions that'll bridge the gap of already fragile relationship between police and public and the communities they serve. The tools that we're coming up with here, the attempts at legislation, do not accomplish that. If anything, they widen the gap. Put police on the defensive. The community looks at police with these kind of attempted controls as a problem or a threat rather than an assistance. And I think part of the driver for this has to do with a lot of the serially repeated anecdotal video episodes out there of bad cops. There are bad cops. Any profession, there's bad actors out there. The issue is you can't take something from a very few out there that are bad actors and use that to put together policy for everybody else out there that is a good actor and needs the tools that will be removed as a result of the bad actors abusing those tools. As a counterpoint to several of the things that we're attempting to do to manage or control or change the nature of police work in our state, I proposed a bill in the session that didn't even get a hearing. It was Senate Bill 5310, and it was a law enforcement protection bill. And those things that we're trying to get police to avoid involving themselves in that create the potential for violence or a bad outcome or excessive use of force. You know, we need to also balance that with having the people out there that would bring those situations on being held accountable too. The bill would have enhanced penalties for violence against police, for looting, riots, these kind of things that we've seen on the news often over the last year or so here. And so I see a lot of what we're attempting to do is misguided here and will probably not obtain the outcome they want. Although the goals they're attempting to accomplish, the change is necessary. These are just not the vehicles to do it. And I'll turn it over to Senator Wagner.
Well, thank you, Senator Hawley. Welcome everybody today. It's our pleasure to be here. And as Senator Hawley pointed out, there is a plethora of so-called police reform bills out there. And frankly, some of them are good. And some of them take a different approach. And the ones that take a different approach that I want to talk about today, and specifically I want to talk about 1054 that came out of the House. It is a police tactics and equipment bill. And I understand that the bill sponsor has probably a different perspective. One of the things I try to caution myself against is reacting to problems that aren't our own. And these bills seem to be reacting to problems that are national problems and not here at home, or very urban problems. And the solutions that have been come up with for these problems, real or perceived, are very urban solutions, and they don't fit well statewide. Specifically, I'm troubled by many things in the bill, although I will say it got much better as it traversed through the House. They took about 6 amendments that made it a better bill. I'm worried about the provision that disallows military surplus equipment to be used by some of our local police forces. It's the only way rural and small counties and cities can afford equipment that they rely on as a safety mechanism. And in particular, there's an item called an MRAP, which is an armored vehicle. It's a shell that comes from the military, usually at no cost to the department, and it's stripped of all military applications. But it's a shield, and it's a very useful tool in my district. I'm trying to get that provision of the bill removed, at least for rural communities. And we've used these vehicles in our community many times. We had an officer in Mount Vernon who was shot in the head and permanently blinded in 2016, Officer Mick, who was evacuated under cover of an MRAP, and the surrounding neighborhood was evacuated. We use those vehicles for flood relief. We use them for all kinds of medical evacuations. And sometimes just the presence of that vehicle makes people say, you know what, I'm going to give up. So it sets a tone and actually reduces violence. So I'm going to work. I think there's still time to work that bill to get us to a place where certainly the ones that have already been purchased should not be pulled from our police departments who rely on that so much. And I'll give you an example of the difference of cost. The bill's kind of crazy because it says if you buy one of these vehicles purpose-built for the police, you can use it. But if you use a military surplus vehicle, which is exactly the same, you may not. So the difference in price, if you purchase one purpose-built, it's about $500,000. Imagine the impact of that to a local police organization. If you get one from the military, it's free, and you put $10,000 or $20,000 worth of improvements to make it useful for your force. So I think that the logic of that should prevail, and I'm looking forward to working with both the bill sponsor and the chair of Law and Justice to see if we can't make some room to make this bill either customized so that urban areas get what they want and rural areas get what we want, or just to take the provision out. But I really think these decisions, these one-size-fit-all state-driven solutions, are often not the best approach to law enforcement, where every community is different.
Okay, with that, we'll go to your questions. Just raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll go ahead and call on you. And if you don't raise your hand, I will give you, I see some people on the call here, I will give you an opportunity to ask a question. Hannah from Cairo Radio, do you have any questions?
I do. And can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
So I heard Senator Patton reference Senator Dingra's bill. I'm wondering, in regard to the Blake decision, I'm wondering if you've had a chance to look at that thoroughly and if there's any aspects that you know that you would support and what you might have issue with.
Yes, that's Senate Bill 5476, Hannah. And I support the idea of some funding. Obviously, this impact is huge on jurisdictions throughout the state. The prosecutors have estimated $100 million. It also uses what's called a navigator program. And maybe if there is a diversion on a first offense or perhaps a second offense, I think that is a good process. What I don't support is kind of the permanent okay for personal use. I shouldn't say okay, but it's a diversion into treatment every time. But at some point, you've got to prosecute these cases, and that's where fixing the decision by adding the words knowingly into the decision come in. And I think we need to do that. That's what Senator Mullet's bill does, 5475, and also the bill I sponsored, 5471. But I think it's important that the legislature address this, and this should be done in a bipartisan way. We're certainly willing to work with Senator Dingra and work with folks in the Ways and Means Committee. But I think for public safety's sake, it's really important that we prosecute these felony drug possessions at some point.
Follow up, Hannah?
I do. I would also like to know if you had any specific thoughts regarding the provisions for minors in Senator Dingra's bill.
Yes, she, well, I think with minors, I think there's a little more openness to treatment, but at the same time, these folks can be hooked. I have been a judge in a therapeutic court, and I like what the drug courts do because they're highly structured. Senator Wagner has quite experience in the military. They're as structured as a military, and they've proven effective. So even when people are ordered into those and not voluntary. So I do support the therapeutic courts, and I think we're open, like I said, to discussing a lot of these things. I agree that it should be illegal for those under 21 to possess controlled substance, which is in the Dingra bill.
Okay, Matt Markovich, Como TV.
Hi, my question's regarding the Blake decision as well. So you have cities like Marysville and Bonnie Lake, I think Lewis County is coming on board, passing their own possession laws, maybe as a stopgap if the legislature doesn't do this. You think that the lawmakers see that happening and may just let that happen going forward? And what's the dangers of allowing that to happen?
Well, I applaud those cities because I think it's important for public safety, at least in those cities, until the legislature does something. I'm sure there's a divergent opinion. I'm sure there's some members of the legislature that support the Supreme Court decision and don't believe we should do anything that favor decriminalization of drugs. So But the danger in it, of course, is that there's a patchwork of laws throughout the state. Overall, in our criminal laws, I think we prefer to have a statewide law. But I do think that this is impacting the Democrat leadership in the legislature to be more responsive, hopefully take more action. Like I say, it's been a month since this decision, and I wish we had seen more progress, but I think it is building right now, and that there's a good chance we'll be able to come together.
Matt, any follow-up question?
Not at this time, thanks.
Anyone else with any questions? Hannah, I think you had another question.
I do actually, and I know some of you I think may have been on the call yesterday, but I'd be curious for any who have not yet spoken on the calls from the Biden administration that seem to be trickling among some in the legislature for gun control or the possibility of reviving some of the bills that were considered dead already on the assault weapons ban and the high capacity magazine bill.
Yeah, I'll be happy to take that, Hannah. This is Senator Wagoner. I understand that he's reacting to something that happened in Colorado, and I don't know a lot about that or what type of gun was used or any of these things. I do know that Boulder already has very severe, I would call oppressive gun control laws, and it didn't prevent the incident from occurring. So I'd be reticent to infringe on Second Amendment rights for that or any other reason. But as I spoke to earlier, you know, sometimes the state seems to feel drawn to react to things that aren't happening here at home. They're happening in other places. And that doesn't mean that we don't have similar problems or we shouldn't watch it and see what the rest of the country is doing. But I don't think that there's any requirement for us to just jump into action every time there's a horrible situation anywhere in the United States or anywhere in the world.
Okay. One more time for any other questions for our senators today? Okay, seeing none. With that, I'm going to say thank you very much for being here. If you have further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you very much.